Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday. Don't worry, we just have a couple more periods to go and then we're out of here. All right. Then we can enjoy the weekend and not having to worry about any of these assignments. All right. So let's kind of jump right in. So this is Friday, October 20th. Please make sure to write down your agenda and make sure you know what is going to be due for today. All right. So we're going to jump into the first thing, which is we're going to go over another quick example upon independent, dependent, and controlled variables. So make sure to write this down on your notes on your journal. So for this example, it tells us what red light affect plant growth. All right. So now we want to find out what our independent variable is. All right. So first thing to do is we want to make sure we understand what independent variable means. Remember, independent variable just means what is going to be changing. So in this example, does red light affect plant growth? We're going to be changing the light. All right. So we have the natural sunlight, and then now we're doing red light. So the red light is going to be our independent variable because that's what we're changing. So it's going to be light color. All right. Next is our dependent variable. Dependent variable is what we're trying to measure based on what we're trying to what is changing. So since light color is changing, what are we going to measure because we're changing that? So again, let's go back. It tells us, does red light affect plant growth? Plant growth. That is what we're trying to measure. We're trying to measure the plant growth after changing the light. So that means plant height is going to be our dependent variable. Now, for controlled variable, it just means what are the things that are gonna be trying to stay the same. All right. So in this case, the things that we want to make sure stay the same is the amount of water we give to each plant. We want to make sure that stays the same. The type of soil each plant has to stay the same. The temperature has to stay the same, and the time, day or night, that has to stay the same. Because those are the things that we're going to try to make sure are consistent and stay the same as we do this experiment. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but if it doesn't, please let me know. I'll be in class. Mr. Farr will be in class, and we'll try to help out as much as we can. But again, make sure you write these on your notes. All right. The next thing we're going to be talking about is now making that information into a data table. So again, make sure to write one of these down on your notes, one of these data tables. We're going to show more examples, but you guys are going to be expected to create your own data table for the next lab. So make sure you at least have one of these examples and you pay close attention to these, all right? So in this example here, this is a data table and we have the title of the experiment up here. So that's going to be the title, the effects of red light on plant height. So now we have here, independent variable is labeled, the types of light, right? Because that's the one that's going to be changing, sunlight, red light. Plant height after a certain amount of time, that's what we're trying to measure. So here we have our measurement, our data after 2 weeks. All right. So this one is kind of a little bit harder since usually we're going to be taking more data. So in actuality, it might kind of look like this instead. So here we have our title, right? The effects of red light on plant height. Here we have our independent variable, which is the types of light, sunlight, red light. Up here we have plant height. Week 1, we have some data, right? Some measurements. Week 2, some data, some measurements. Week 3, some data, some measurements. Those will be our dependent variables. So this is most likely how our data tables are going to be. So again, from these examples, make sure you kind of like write at least one of them down. So then you know what you're going to be using for the next lab. Some other data tables can also look like this. So we kind of went over this one on the last slide, but these two, they're a bit harder, but more or less they're still the same. It's still a data table. Here we have our time. Here we have our distance. So our independent variable, what is going to be changing is going to be our time. What we're trying to measure is our distance. So it's going to be kind of similar, right? Like, so when we don't start the time yet, our distance is 0. After 1 second, we measured our distance to be 18. After 2 seconds, we measured our distance to be 36. It's going to be kind of similar, right? Time is changing. Time is an independent variable. Distance is what we're trying to measure. Distance will be a dependent variable. Similar to like the one down here, we have distance and time. So it's going to be kind of similar again. So time is going to be our independent variable because that's going to be changing as we move on. Our dependent variable is what we're going to be trying to measure. So that's going to be our distance that we have up here. So you guys could use one of these examples or for the ones from the previous slides, but please make sure to write these on your notes because you're going to be using them, or at least using something similar when you create your own data table for the next lab. So please, again, make a note of this, all right? So the next thing we want to talk about is a scientific phenomena. So what is a scientific phenomena? Oh, actually, before starting that, please make sure to write these on your notes. These are going to be going on your notes. Let me move my camera right here. Please make sure you write these on your journals, all right? Because when we do the next, not this upcoming journal check, the next journal check, we're going to check for this as well. So jumping back into this, here we have scientific phenomena. So what is a scientific phenomena? So the actual definition here we have is scientific phenomena are occurrences in the natural and human-made world that can be observed and which cause one to wonder and ask questions. Okay, that's a little bit wordy, but don't worry. Let's kind of like break it down. So essentially, this kind of means like something that happens in the human or natural world that we're just trying to wonder like why does that happen? So like for example, let's say like usually in the morning or in the evening when the sun is going down, the sky kind of turns a different color. Why does that happen? So that could be a phenomena, right? Like it's something that occurs in the natural world as the sun is setting, the sky turns into a different color. So now you're left wondering, well, why does that happen? So now we ask these questions, and our goal is to find those answers. So similarly, think and discuss in your table with your partners. Discuss what phenomena have you observed in this past week and which has caused you to wonder and ask questions, right? Does that kind of make sense? All right, awesome. So make sure to pause, do that. Last thing.
All right, what we are going to do next, now that we know how to identify an independent, dependent, and a control variable, we also looked at how to build a data table. You guys on page number 56, you guys made a testable question right here. And if you did not, then that means you need to make yourself a testable question. So the things that I want you to do for this, okay, so hear me, is make sure you have a testable question. Then identify what are your independent, dependent, and control variables for this testable question. Make a list of everything you would actually need in order to do an experiment to find out if we can answer that testable question. So write a list of all the things, and then you're going to want to write out the procedures. What are you going to do? How are you actually going to do it? So having your independent, dependent, and your control variables, and then having a list of the things that you're actually going to have will help you to figure out like what is it you're going to actually do. Then what I want you to do is make a data table on how you're going to capture that data from your dependent variable for this testable question. So do that all on this area right here. So if you just wrote the testable question, then you have a whole bunch of room here, and then we are not going to do this CER right here on page 57, so you can use all of the space on this page in order to get all of those things down. And again, here, I'm going to put them on the screen so that way you can know exactly what we're doing. So these are the things you need to have down there. You should have the testable question already if you completed this appropriately, right? So again, you want your testable question in there already, and then you're going to identify your independent, dependent, and control variables based on your questions. It's exactly what we've been doing. Now we're just taking it from hypotheticals to we're moving towards reality of doing these things. Then you want to make a list of materials needed, like what would you need to actually do this experiment, and then make a list of procedures to carry out your experiment / investigation. So in order to actually do the experiment or the investigation for this testable question, what is the order? What would we do? How would we do it, right? And then down below, make a data table to capture your data for your dependent variable. Because remember, the dependent variable, that's the thing that we're going to be capturing and measuring the data from. So I'm just going to scroll back and be like, you have all of this page down here, 56, and then you can just scratch all these out because you won't need any claim evidence reasoning for any of that. You can use this whole page 57 to get all your things together. Now, some of you guys did a testable question and you guys already did procedures. So then now you guys would just be like, okay, cool. We need to identify our independent, dependent, and our control variables. And then we got to do the materials needed. And then we need to make a data table. So some of you guys are a little bit further ahead. So that's what you need to do. And then once you have completed that, I think the last thing is to make sure that if you're online, you get this turned in. I think Mr. Tafoya already mentioned that. And then also if you are online or in person, either or, you need to get this done because this is due today. All right, y'all. Peace.